So welcome to everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Banyen Books is on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. My name is Jacob Steele, the events coordinator for Banyen Books and Sound. Banyen is Canada's most comprehensive bookstore specializing in spirituality and healing. Banyen's an independent bookstore, now celebrating our 50th anniversary year. Banyen has Western Canada's best selection of oracle and tarot decks. The store is open for in-person browsing every day, and Banyen also offers prepaid pickups and mail orders anywhere. So even if you're joining from the States, you can order through Banyen. So just visit banyen.com. So welcome to this evening's event with Chris-Anne. Chris-Anne is a deck creator, artist, and magic maker, as well as a marketing strategist and owner of Pixel Brand, a branding and graphic design company. She's the creator of 3 card decks, now published by Hay House: the Sacred Creators Oracle, the Light Seers Tarot, and the Muse Tarot. And she offers unique courses for creators that combine marketing and branding with manifestation and intuition. Chris-Anne is joined tonight in conversation with Allison Janice, her editor at Hay House. If you have questions for Chris-Anne during the event, please type them into the Q&A box, and Allison will present as many of them as she can to Chris-Anne. It's a real thrill to have you both here with us tonight. I now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jacob. It's actually, this is so exciting because I've never had the chance to chat with Allison like this. Allison and I have worked so closely together on so many projects, but it's always sort of about the project. So this is really cool. You know, like the chat with the editor. I love it.
Yeah, I was saying to someone when we were organizing this about how our chats are always endless. I always have to, chunk out my whole afternoon because I know we're just going to chat forever. So it's always fun. But I guess we can get started. Like my first question is, we'll get right into it. So start thinking about how this year, has been really rough on all of us, and with quarantine, pandemic, upheaval. I don't have to list it. Everybody's been through it. We all were through 2020 together. But, you've been working on a deck this whole time, like trying to get into that creative space. And I wondered if you wanted to share like how you managed to stay creative and connected to, your spiritual practice as well throughout this time, and like some advice that you might have for the viewers and to see how they can connect to that space for themselves as well.
Yeah, 2020 has been a doozy for everyone, hasn't it? It's been, it's just, and finding creativity, that's a good question, Allison, because creativity, it's not just that creativity's been a challenge for me personally. I know it's been a challenge for a lot of people, but it's also like basic stuff, like, it's just how I find my creative, my creative inspiration, that's changed dramatically. Because one of the things that I found when even trying to like write this year, I am a coffee shop writer. Like I like to go into a coffee shop where it's super busy and there's all the buzz and like I can smell the lattes getting made, and sometimes you just hear like a couple of words from a conversation, and that's sort of a form of divination in and of itself, right? Like you're kind of like stuck on an idea and you get like a word from here and a word from there, and you're like, oh, okay, now now the flow comes back. So even just the day-to-day work, I work from home, but I don't work in my home. So just figuring out how to do that. There are actually apps that recreate coffee shop sounds. There are like Spotify, there are ways to kind of like do that now, which is amazing. So a few people gave me that tip, like go find coffee shop sounds, and so just trying to figure out how to recreate a space that feels like somewhat normal. And it's not normal, but somewhat normal, because I've had this year massive creative blocks. like debilitating anxiety for a few months, just because of just the overwhelming change in the world, and like not really understanding how to, like, we're learning how to do everything, right? So learning how to be creative in this space has been, it's been interesting. But I think the biggest thing that helped me to kind of get through a lot of my creative blocks and during 2020 was just saying it's okay to be blocked, and like, what does that mean, and how do I work with what I have now? And not that it's okay to be blocked, it's okay to be different. It's going to be different. This year is going to be totally different. Right now we are creating in a new space. I'm, like I said, finding coffee shop sounds or realizing that I need to move my home office from room to room to room just to change it up. So sometimes I'll be in the spare bedroom, sometimes I'm in the kitchen, sometimes it's really like I can't tell you how many times outside in my backyard on a rock, more time in nature. But now that we're in winter, now I'm really like, okay, changing up the rooms. And so it has been challenging, but also wonderful in so many ways. And that sounds different, but I mean, as a creative person, I think sometimes we get used to the way we do our own creativity. And so this has been like forced growth. How are we creative when we're feeling maybe a little bit afraid or things are uncertain? We're being forced to try new things. And I suspect that we're going to have this beautiful renaissance after all of this, because we've had this sort of push to, how do we do it in this weird sticky, how do we do it in the mud? And then on the other side of it, we're just going to be so freaking resilient and fabulous. So I think we're going to have this beautiful renaissance. So I'm looking forward to having that freedom to create without the layers of uncertainty that are always sort of in the back of my mind right now. So
yeah, I feel that. I'm sure people can relate. And yeah, you've been lucky. I feel like I always see on Instagram we talk about like since you do have like a beautiful backyard, you have nature so near you, and you get to go out there with your dog and stuff. So I love that you have that.
That's been for me such a blessing. Oh my goodness, this winter we were like, we're gonna go snowboarding all winter. We're gonna be out there every single day, and they closed the hills, and we were like, oh, okay, we didn't have a plan B. We got to figure that out. So it's but you know what? It's also been beautiful too. I was creating this new deck that you know about, and it's just this really silly, fun, quirky deck, and that at least gave me kind of this outlet, this place to go to, where I could find something that would make me laugh or find something that would make me smile. I mean, that, like, every little thing that I found in like last year that would be like, oh, yeah, this gave me something to feel good about. I would hold on to that with like for dear life, because there was so many other things that were just so challenging, and we had to, it's not either or, but it's really good to hold on to those things that do make us feel good too.
Yeah. And I remember like when you initially were working, like thinking about new projects, the original projects that you pitched were like a little darker, not dark. I mean, still bright and having, positivity, but you went with the fun, quirky one. So I think you've said to me that you needed it. And I love that.
And it's just on some level, I knew I was going to need it. Thank goodness I had it this year. Yeah. Because the other decks were just way too serious, way too profound, like thinking about like consciousness and like thinking about just like these archetypal patterns that we all have. And I don't think I could, it would have been too much this year. It would have been too much to take on. Yeah. My brain would have, no. Wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, you need your little zany animals. I'm sure if people are following you on Instagram, they've seen some of the like fun little creatures that are coming up the next deck. So, but to focus back on this deck, the Sacred Creator Oracle, I wanted to ask you, so, as if people have been following you for a long time, or maybe they don't know this is like sort of the second life for this deck. It came out a couple of years ago, and I wondered like how it feels now, like from then to now, like seeing this deck come into new life and like thinking about it again and thinking about people interacting with it again, like what are your thoughts and your hopes for people as they like rediscover this deck or discover it for the first time?
Yeah. You know, the world has changed so much in the last 5 or 6 years since this deck started. So we kind of had to do the revamp. We needed a little bit of a makeover, but it feels like when I first published this deck, I did it as an indie, like self-published project. And I kind of had to, in 2015, I had to convince people that magic and business could exist together, or that intuition and business could exist together even. And now in 2021, it's like people, it's sort of a given. And I don't really, I think maybe I was too busy, or I was just so in it that I didn't notice, but I don't remember when it became a given. Like, it's like I missed that. But 5, 6 years ago, you walk into a business meeting and you tell them you're going to work on intuition, but uh, not with that knowing piece, not without the strategy, pure intuition. And they were like, no way, this doesn't make sense, this is not a business thing. And now it's kind of, so that's amazing to see, because that's everything that I hoped the world would become, you know, making this deck. And I felt like it was such a weird deck, it was a weirdo, it was this little idea that I thought, this is crazy. And now people are like, oh yeah, that's I need that. So there's a lot less convincing that's needed right now, but it's definitely not as weird a thing as it was. And so that's sort of neat to see the growth. It's not like the deck, the heart and soul of the deck hasn't changed, but the world has changed. And it's been phenomenal to see. And like I said, I don't know when it happened.
Yeah, and I know the main update to the deck is probably, the shorter guidebook that fits into the box, but also you did a lot of stuff with the colors and like refreshing them. I don't remember exactly where that came from, but did you want to speak about that a little bit, about like
Yeah,
where that changed?
I think, you know, just I felt like I wanted to go more into, the deck was a little more subtle before, and it was beautiful and it was on trend in 2015. But, and I love pastels, but I just wanted something that was a little more punchy. One, to go with, you know, so it would kind of look and work well in readings with the Muse Tarot, with the Light Seers Tarot. So it would kind of work in that family of decks, but also because it allowed me to bring a little more color psychology into it, a little more feel, like, you know, there's a broader range of colors, darks and lights and feelings now that it sort of, it missed out on the first time that it that it went to print. So yeah, it definitely had that little bit of a boost, you know. It was needed.
Good. Yeah, I'm glad you got the chance to do it. So I guess, speaking about that deck and thinking about the other decks that you have, they were just on the screen right here. But one thing that's always stood out to me, and I'm sure stands out to your readers, like every single project that you do is completely visually new and different. And you're unique in that you do create, you create all the art for your own work. And there are tons of tarot, and oracle creators who they're amazing, but they don't actually create the art, but you really infuse your art with the intention that goes into the same message with the messages. And that's always been, a huge, to me, a huge selling point of working with you. And I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about like the inspiration and the different, personalities of the decks and things like that.
Sure. Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I feel like as a creator, when you are like, it's something that it's just natural to me to kind of like, I get bored quickly, and so I'm always wanting to like try new things and try new medium, and like, what is it going to look like if I use digital collage, or what's it going to look like if I use illustration, or I like to play. But I know that there's like pros and cons to that. As an artist, you know, a lot of artists have like it's almost like a writer having a voice. Artists have their own their look and feel, and you could look at their stuff and not know who it's by and know immediately that it's by them. And that is oftentimes a sign of like a really fabulous artist who's got a really strong, just a really strong style. And so I often feel insecure about that because it makes me, I have this, you know, I could put something new out, unless people know that it's mine, and they may not know that it's mine because it's so different. But then I kind of have more of a, I come from a graphic design background, so I really do approach my projects more from a design perspective, not as much as the art. Like I'm not as much, I have a hard time saying like I'm an artist, you know, I'm a designer, I'm a really good designer. And people will argue that they're different, you know, that, or that design is art. And I do think it's a type of art, but it just allows for a little more breadth of style. And so I also think that it allows the decks to have a little more, like they can have their own personality that way. They can have their own, like they can really be a whole new thing. And that is something that, you know, I can't imagine creating any other way. I couldn't. If you said do another deck that looks exactly like this but a little bit different, I couldn't. I would get so, it's already been done. And I think every single style, you know, there is something about the personalities of the deck that sort of dictates the style in a way too. You know, with Light Seers, when I was creating that deck, when I started creating the Light Seers Tarot, I was like, I had this mantra on repeat. It was like, let it be healing, let it be healing, let it be healing. And that was when I was creating, that's just the art that came, because that was my, like, this, like, it was just there. It was like this, a prayer over all of the work, you know? And when I was doing the Muse Tarot, it felt totally different. Like the Light Seers felt a little bit cerebral. I had choices to make. It was very thoughtful. Whereas the Muse was much more, it felt like this creative thing that was living outside of me, like a muse that's kind of just like whoosh, it just came into me, and I was more like a vessel, or I was more like I was photoshopped by proxy, you know, just doing the work. And it just had like a different vibration, a different quality to the energy, and it was all, and so it wasn't me saying let it be healing, let it be healing, let it be healing. It was just like I was just hearing, this is like inspiration, creativity, inspiration, creativity. So it was just a different, you can tell the decks are so different, even the colors and the the way the light, and I mean, it could be like the energetic light when we're talking about the way the light vibrates, but literally when you look at them and the light bounces off of them, the Muse is just like, you know, it's fuchsia. And because it has that, you know, I wanted it to be kind of a catalyst for other people's creativity. So they have such different purposes, you know? And Sacred Creators, again, is that more of a catalyst for people's dreams and getting their you know, getting their goals solidified, you know, concretized in their mind, so that they can then, you know, take 2 or 3 steps ahead on them, and understand where their own internal blocks are. So again, it's totally different, more color, word, and sacred geometry, or just geometric kind of images or icons, because that's really it's just a different type of message that I wanted I just wanted it to go into a different part of the mind, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I was also thinking, like talking about the specific cards and the design of them. I don't think we've ever talked about this. I was thinking about how, you know, in each of your decks, like usually, I mean, I was thinking Light Seers specifically, like there's a, you know, prompt at the beginning of the guidebook talking about like finding like your light card and your shadow card. And I think Muse has similar, like each deck sort of has its own version of that, like choosing the card in the deck that resonates with you, and maybe a card that you're having a hard time with and you're not sure why, and maybe need to work on that one. But I wondered if you had some favorites of the decks, or ones that were your shadows and that you wanted to talk about and you thought people would be interested to hear. I'm interested to hear. So
So I do like I definitely have cards like in the Light Seers. There are cards that for me were sort of when I was creating it in the beginning, and sort of when you start, it's such a large task, because you're looking at 78 pieces of artwork that should all kind of go together, but they have to kind of fit the old archetypes, but you want them to be new. And so I was probably 2 or 3 cards in, just kind of getting the style on Light Seers. And then my Queen of Pentacles showed up. And my Queen of Pentacles, when she arrived, I was like, it was just like this, the deck has arrived. Like I had that sense. So the Queen of Pentacles was kind of my guiding light for the deck, because she just felt, she was so grounded, so regal. She has these like kind of little branchy things coming out of her sort of, they're kind of like this pseudo nature crown. And there was just something about that card that it just speaks to me in a way that none of the other cards do in that deck. I like a lot of the cards in that deck. There are for some reason the 5 of Wands was really hard.
I found her. I found the Queen. People remember this one?
Yeah. And the 5 of Wands was the card that was the last card that showed up. It took a really long time. And it went through like probably 6 different concepts, and like iterations, and that one for me was it just eluded me forever. And the other one that usually my favorite card, I'm huge, I love the Hermit. The Hermit is always kind of, it has been for years, not all the time, but most chunks of time in my life, the Hermit is kind of my go-to card. I'll check that one out in the deck. And the Hermit was the last major to show up, and that freaked me out, because I thought, oh my gosh, I don't have a Hermit. Like, the deck cannot be born unless I have this really amazing Hermit. And she took forever as well. So I really do. The Hermit kind of gives me this special sort of hope. It's kind of a light card in that way. Like, things may take a little bit longer. So for me, that Hermit has this special message of patience, which makes sense for a Hermit card, but there's something about that one that's just a little bit, of all the majors, the Hermit is that's my light card for the majors for sure.
Yeah.
And I think in the Muse, the Muse is such a different, because like I said, it wasn't a cerebral, it just kind of flowed. And so those cards, I don't have the memory of really struggling with them in the same way. Mm-hmm. Not struggling, but like needing to really like fine tune and chisel them. Light Seers just felt like it was much more of an art project, and the Muse kind of, like I said, it felt like a party.
I love that. I'm going to write down Photoshop by proxy. I've heard of automatic writing. I've heard of all these different techniques, but Photoshop also works, I guess.
Well, the Muse also showed up. I mean, it was funny because it felt like that deck, I say showed up because I don't do that much of, like, not a lot of my work feels like it's like that sort of automatic writing, but the Muse did. And it even showed up with like, here's the image and here's the poem. And I'd be like working on the image and then having to stop to like scribble down words because I'm hearing the poetry to the word. Like, it was a wild thing. In 2017, I think it was 2018, would have been 2017. That year I picked the word mused as my word of the year. And it was like, not like amused, but like, how do I want to feel? I want to feel inspired, but I want to feel like mused. Like, I really want that understanding of what that is. And it was that I got it. I got it. And it was amazing. And I don't know if I'll ever feel that same kind of fiery, like insane inspiration again. I hope I do, but not ever in that amount, because I was doing 2 decks at the same time. I was exhausted, but it was almost like this ecstatic state. You hear about like kind of a creative that gets, it's like this like obsessive need to stay up till 4 a.m. doing the work. That's the state that I was in. So I was like, okay, I can feel mused and I want to feel mused, but I can't live in that. It's just, we're human. We can't live in that sort of like divine energy for extended periods of time because we just can't. We need sleep and exercise and all of that other stuff.
Yeah, that was an incredibly like generative year for you. And then I like even, sending out all the Kickstarter things, just like the physical work of everything too is so much. But I always love, like you were talking about language and poetry, like Mused. Of course, that was your word of the year. Like if anybody's read any of Christiane's guidebooks and you've seen the like beautiful way you play with language. And I wondered, like, has that always been a part of your practice? Have you always done poetry? Has that always been something that's come naturally to you? And like, what has that meant to you?
Poetry, yes, but I always felt like, because my poetry isn't like, like the poetry I like to read is the poetry that is like there's not necessarily rhyme and rhythm to it. And my poetry, I feel like it's almost naive in a way because it has this sort of cadence of a limerick, or it's just got this, and it usually rhymes. And so I always sort of felt like I do all of this poetry, but I don't know if anyone will ever read it. I don't know if anyone's ever going to like it because it's so childlike, almost. It's whimsical. I don't want to see like, it feels kind of like whimsical, but playful, but not serious enough to be really good poetry. But I do talk about serious topics, but that's just my own like inner critic, we're so hard on ourselves. But it was such a blessing to be able to bundle poetry with my design work in this tarot, because poetry is metaphor and tarot is metaphor. So I just had this underlying sense that it would be able to speak to people in a different way, and they're going to get the message they need to get, because poetry, you and I could read the same poem and think about totally different moments in our life, right? So I just wanted to give it a try. So it's something I'm so proud of. It is something I'm so proud of because I always felt like I was never going to be able to do that as I could say I'm a published poet. That feels like really good to me because it feels like something that I always wanted but thought I would never have.
Yeah. Well, I love your poetry. I love the fact that it rhymes. I feel like it kind of gets stuck in your head that way, and you can remember it, and it can become like a mantra, like the way that especially in Muse, like at the end of each card you have sort of a couple of lines, like selections of the fuller poems that you have like on your website and in the indie version. But I love that they rhyme. I love that they feel like little special couplets that you really thought through. I love that.
I have a Celtic background. Probably comes very naturally to me, right? Because that's like part of like it is really part of the like even like Celtic or Druid faith, it all kind of comes through these like triads, and there's like these little like these little dancey kind of, yeah, I think that maybe, thank you. I really do. I do appreciate that. But it is something that I felt I always wanted to do, never had the guts to do it. No? Yeah. And it's something that I would say to anyone watching, like, you have, like, we always, I try and let people know, like, where were the things that I felt like insecure about, because I think that, it's so easy to look at something when it's done and think, oh, they just knew it was going to be this great thing. Nobody ever knows that. We just try, we just launch and like cross our fingers and hope that it will be understood or enjoyed. Yeah.
So I would love, so there's some questions coming in, which is awesome. I think they look really juicy. So maybe, I know that we talked a little bit about like having you do like a little bit of a reading, maybe some intention setting. I don't know which deck you wanted to use. We didn't talk about that, but
No, I have do you want to we could do that closer to the end too if you want.
okay, yeah. We could do questions. Let's see. How do I get those to pop back up? Oh, here we go. Sorry, you're seeing how this all gets made. So let's see. So someone's asking, oh, Barry is asking, he's a newbie when it comes to decks. Can you give him a little bit of a deck 101? How would you use the deck like Sacred Creators to you initiate your creativity? He's a musician and a writer and creative, familiar with creative flow and creative blocks.
Awesome. Okay, so Barry, musician and writer. Okay, so Barry, I'm going to pull out a Sacred Creators Oracle for you because it was specific to Sacred Creators. Sacred Creators, I think you would probably enjoy either Sacred Creators or the Muse, because the Muse is also kind of inspiration. But for Sacred Creators, I'm going to pull a card for you just to give you an example. So we're going to do this together, just because you're wondering, how would we initiate creativity with this? So I've got two. I've got the Now for you, which is about being present. You can see that there is a little clock on there. And I just want you to take a peek at that image, Barry, and see if maybe that reminds you of anything, maybe that reminds you of something to do with your music, something to do with the type of writing you do. Maybe maybe there's a sense of, so if I were doing a reading for you, I would be asking you about your timing and wondering, number one, can you play with timing in your music a little bit? Take a song you already have and totally change the timing up, because that's specific to how to use this card for your creativity when it comes to the now and timing. And I would also ask you to question just a little bit around how often you tell yourself that you got to do it quickly. Like maybe it's a little bit too late, or maybe like things are a little bit, we have that like inner creative jerk sometimes that's sometimes amazing, saying, get your stuff in on time. I have to say that because my editor's sitting in front of me. But sometimes that little voice is also like really pushing us and saying, oh, you're too old, or this is never going to happen, or you know what, you missed that chance. So that would be also this particular deck, that's the type of thing it might ask you. It might ask you to look at some of those questions around, what are some of the blocks that I have around my own creative projects? What are some of the blocks I have around my process? And mostly, what are some of the mindset blocks I have that are stopping me from completing the things that I really want to complete? And the other one that I have here for you is, what does your soul say? So that is sort of this is one of the cheekier questions of this deck, because it's really kind of like, the answer, and then there's a bunch of journal prompts that it's going to ask you just to kind of get things rolling. So that would be one kind of way. Top of my head too, I mean, if I were a musician, I wish I were, I would even look at every single color has a different tonal quality to it. And I know that they do, there are correspondences to musical notes and colors. And so you could even say, I'm going to pull out, colorful deck like this one, and just go, okay, these are my cards. 1, 2, I wish I knew which correspondences are, because I could say, then you're going to go in with an A, C, E, G, and I don't know what the correspondences are, but you can look them up. And then you could even just, give yourself a new, a new thing to start off with. And that would be just like one quick, like those are a few top of mind ways that you can work with decks, and unique ways for all different types of situations. For writing, there may be other writers here listening. For writing, tarot decks, I would say 100%, if you don't own a deck, jump to a tarot deck for writing, because the tarot journey, the majors were looking at the Fool's journey, and the Fool's journey is just like the hero's journey. And so we have the full human condition baked into 22 cards. The Fool is at the very beginning of the journey, goes right through all of these amazing things, ends up at the world where they kind of come to completion full circle, and then they go right back to the Fool. So you can learn about the archetypes. And these are human condition archetypes. Pull a card when you are doing character studies, or when you're trying to figure out, what happens to this weird side character because I want to make him a little more juicy in this book. And then you can go pull one of the majors as one of the major overarching stories, or one of the minors, which would be there are 4 different suits in a tarot deck, just like there are 4 suits in a regular card deck. And those are more situational. And they'll tell you, maybe they're falling in love, or maybe they're stuck at their job. And so a lot of writers will push through writer's block using tarot. And it's a fabulous way for you to kind of jump in and just get some creative connections buzzing and flying. Yeah. I could talk about that for a long time. And I did.
Oh, I love it. I think it's great. Yeah, and he was asking like how do you do a reading? Yeah, like you can do it for yourself, to other people. And as Kristen was mentioning, like the journal prompts, like in the guidebook, like it's a pretty chunky little guidebook, and all of her decks have pretty chunky little guidebooks that like have a correspondence for each card, and you can read the journal prompts and things like that. And there are more resources on her website of how to use these cards to their fullest extent if you're really new to it, and the intuitive part is maybe not as natural for you. But let's see.
There's no right way or wrong way. Like, just holding a deck in your hand, shuffling it, like the more you shuffle it, the more used to just kind of getting into flow with any deck you're going to feel. I find like even just shuffling and breathing brings my energy to this, like right away I'm more relaxed, because the more you do something, it's kind of, you get into this flow state. And then for readings for yourself, it's just ask a question, any question. It's not a yes or no question, but what do I need to know more about, or tell me what I need to know about X. It's that simple. And you pull a card, and you can decide if you're going to pull 1 or 2, depending on their different spreads. Pull a card, and then we kind of just look at the card, and then your intuition is going to put the pieces together. Right away, you're going to start to make connections. This reminds me of someone. This reminds me of a situation. And you go to the guidebook, and there's a whole bunch of information about each card. So you're going to, anyone can read cards. It's not only for people who are, that would call themselves psychics, or not at all. Tarot reading is a beautiful way for us to kind of dive into the self, into our own souls, into our own minds. It's our own psychology, Yeah.
All right, so let's move to another question. So Haley is asking, question for Chris. I've been trying to commit to creating my own tarot deck for years, but every time I delve into it, I find that my style of art changes. And after 10 or 12 cards, I feel like I have to start over. Wonder if you have any wisdom to share. And she says she loves your work. So.
Oh, thank you, Haley. So I did that. And a lot of artists that are going to create a tarot deck do that. So you are in really good company. I probably started 5 decks before I actually did one and finished it. So it was often in the back of my mind, because it's such and I think sometimes we need to do that, because it's an extraordinary amount of work, and we really underestimate it until we get into 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of art, and then, wow, 4 down, 74 to go. Like it's a big thing. So don't beat yourself up about that. I think that it makes sense to do 1 or 2 until you really find a style that you love, and if you grow, there are decks out there by artists that are the Mary L. Tarot I'm thinking of is coming to mind, and she took about 10 years, I think, to do her deck. And so I think her style, changed along the way, but the deck, because it's hers, it still holds together, and it's an amazing, beautiful piece of art. So if it takes you 10 years, or if it takes you 10 tries to get started, don't give up. Yeah, it's a journey worth taking.
Somebody had a kind of related question. Lindsay is asking that she has Muse Tarot, and she'd love to know where the images come from. The deck's so vibrant and otherworldly and even dreamlike. How do the scenes form in your mind? And you talked a little bit about that for Muse, but I think you could talk about it with the others too. She wondered, does the idea for the card come all at once, or is it more of a meticulous design process?
For the Muse, So that was more, it's taking me a second to recall because it was so fast and furious. It was just a visual, you know? um, Honestly, with the Muse, I had an idea of what I was looking for each card, but I was working with stock photography. And so there's oftentimes you're sort of like, oh, you know that you want someone looking this way, but then I also added in textures that I would scan in or bits and pieces from this and that. So it was sort of this is gonna just it was almost like very self-indulgent design because it was really what looks the most beautiful, what do I love, what feels good, oh yeah, that image. And sometimes I'd be looking, what would often happen I found with that deck is I would be looking for images for card A, and then along the way I'd be like, that's perfect for this, that's perfect for that. So it's not it wasn't this long arduous process of searching for stuff. It was just I would look for one and then I would be inspired by colors, often, black and white. I just was really into like these black and white lines and these whooshy kind of images and the patterns and it was just what feels good. It was such a sensing sort of design project. I don't think I've ever done anything, or I never gave myself permission to do something. I'd never done anything now that I'm like quite like that. It was just about how does it feel? It was this visceral, like yes or no. I don't know if that was a very good answer, but that's the way it felt to me.
I think it's good. I mean, from an outsider perspective, like Christine is a perfectionist. Like she never just says it's done here and like hands it over and says it's fine if there's a mistake or it's fine if she doesn't like that color. Like she wants to be involved in every step of the process, and we love her for that. Makes the cards better. And I feel like your process never stops until the deck goes to print, and then even after that, you're like, wait, could we just do one thing?
I could,
which is great.
Forever, I could be fixing things forever, and that's something that working in design, the client would say, okay, we're done, or the money would run out. And sometimes I remember when I was working in design and being like, well, they're not paying me for this next like 5 hours, but I want it to be perfect. And they didn't notice, but I did. So I'm a horrible client for myself because I just am like, oh, I just want it to feel right. But then I just think about how it's going to land with other people, like how the message is conveyed just that little bit more makes all the difference in the world. It just might change someone's world if they get the right reading that sets them on the right, there's this like love. It's like they're like these they're not living, breathing things. I know that, but they feel like they are. They have these, yeah. Mm. I sound like a crazy creative.
I think people appreciate that. This question is kind of related too. I feel like it sort of draws right in. Somebody was saying, like she's saying that you show a lot of integrity in the community and like you're creating of artwork, and like how does community shape your work? And this is from Lisa, and I mean I've seen that, and you should definitely talk about that. It's such an interesting part of your process.
Yeah, definitely. Light Seers 100%. It was like a community process. So Lisa, I'm guessing that you were there when we were doing like all of the Light Seers, where I was asking people, this color or that color, do you like this concept or that concept? And the community actually helped to even name the deck. My original idea for the deck was Tarot of Shadows and Sunshine. And then Instagram told me, no, we like Light Seers. And so that became the tagline. A journey of shadows and sunshine kind of came afterwards. I still snuck it in there, but I think the community, the tarot community is amazing. And there are so many, I mean, tarot is number one. It's everyone's, it's for everyone. And there's so many different perspectives, and there's so many different styles of reading and types of readers and people who read this way or that way or buy the book, or people that read, predictive reading. And so I can't, as a creator, I could create my deck for me, which I do, but then I also want to leave that space as if the community is the client, because ultimately they are, and they know best when it comes to, well, we really love all of this. And then if I hear, well, but we're not sure about this, then I want to be open to that feedback, because it's going to make a better tool. So if I am being, I think it's important as a commercial, like, I consider myself kind of a commercial artist. It's not just like self-indulgent all the time. I can't just create everything that I want. And if I do that, then it's probably not going to be, it won't be a good tool for everyone. So when you're like, when you have that mantra, especially Light Seers, it was like that, I want it to be healing, let it be healing, let it be healing. Then how can I know if it's healing if I'm not really putting it out every step of the way and getting the feedback that I need to get so that it works as best as it can work? So I think that's, community is, I'm so lucky. Like, I feel so grateful that we have the online community, that we're living in this beautiful age where we can do that, where we can reach out online and ask people and get feedback right away. Also, because I'm so indecisive. Full transparency, I am super indecisive. So if I look at like 4 different backgrounds and I like them all, I could sit and look at that for 4 hours and look at every shade of blue in between and not ever get it done. But if I can put it out to the community and say, which one do you guys like? And there's like 80% like that, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go with that. So yeah, we're just so lucky. We are. The community is amazing that way. And I feel like without the community, 100%, 100%, the deck would never have happened, you know? Like, there was the people that backed it when it was just this like idea in my head, and then people that helped shape it, and they helped in the indie guidebook anyways. And the indie guidebook is no longer, but the information is still on my website. Like, there was even the comments from people of what they saw on the cards. We used those and we asked for permission. Can we put that on the website? Because I didn't see that, but you did. And maybe what you saw is going to help someone else. Yeah, it was a beautiful project that way. I love that. Oh, thank you, Lisa, for being a part of the community. I appreciate you. Yeah.
Let's see. I wanted to ask one of them. So it's so fun reading all of these. People have some really specific questions, like somebody who's asking if there's significance. Christy was asking, on Light Seers, most of the card names are at the bottom, yet 5 cards have the names written at the top. Is there a reason?
There's
I
not.
actually don't know.
There's not. It was just that the way the art was, it just wouldn't work. And I tried to move them all so that they were all the same. That's a good question, because sometimes there are, like, some of the things were very specific. With Light Seers, it was just, how do I fit this in a way that works with the artwork? And I wanted it to not interfere. So it's not that it's random. I shouldn't say like it's just wherever it fits. It's that sometimes the art requires it to be in a different frame of the card. From a design philosophy, like if you're looking at something, so the right hand side of the card is the future, the left hand side is the past. We have the up, and that's because in Western society, we read from left to right. So we consider this to be like the past and this is the future. That's just the way we see the cards. So sometimes the placement of the figure on the card was more important than having the titles all the time in the same spot. So it was wherever they fit, but it was based on where the image was on the card. I hope I explained that well. Which is good. Which is great for tarot, right? When you're thinking about like where things are placed on the card, we just get a natural intuitive hit better when we think about art that way.
I think this card is, this question is a little related to Sacred Creators in a way. Ruth is asking, I feel these days that it seems as though marketing is as important, if not more so, than the product itself. Would you agree? And if so, how would you recommend that creators best find their way in that?
Yeah, good question. So not more important for sure, but it is very important, right? Like you need a good product, because if we've all been there where we've kind of bought something that we thought was amazing and then it wasn't, because the marketing got us, and then that product doesn't have a long life because it just doesn't have that kind of word of mouth that you eventually do need, or the reviews, or et cetera, et cetera. But marketing is important for sure. I think in the world we're living in now, and within any sort of spiritual, tarot, intuitive lifestyle wellness, like depending on what you're marketing, but in that sphere, honest marketing and authentic marketing, and just being really like clean, I want to say, with your message, like honest with your message, is going to resonate. Not only are we already 100 million times smarter than we were 10 years ago with marketing, because we're starting to get really smart as audiences of, wait a second, that's manipulative, or this algorithm is doing this to me. Like we're starting to question everything. We are really thinking critically about all media that's coming at us right now. We're kind of in this age of what is true. And so being honest and feeling right with yourself when you're doing your marketing. I know that sounds funny, but marketing can put us in a place of so much scarcity and lack, and like feeling like I'm not good enough, and are they going to like it? And when you're putting yourself out there, you can feel really vulnerable. So being honest about your vulnerability is going to put you into, okay, I'm clear with my communication. This is what I'm selling. This is why I think you're going to like it. Honestly, I really hope you do. Instead of that like super glossy, perfect marketing. Like we're the too perfect right now. Nobody's really buying it, And when you're in this wellness sphere, where I was going with that is that we have an audience of people who are very intuitive. So when you are selling to people who are intuitive, well, they're going to pick up on everything. If you're like not so sure, that if you think it's not very, like I'm not saying your product, if someone else is selling a product that's not very good, and the audience is gonna pick up on that. So really, for your marketing, just it's like getting right with yourself before you like, I know what's great about the product, and really knowing why it's going to help people, and really understanding how they're going to find benefit in it. That's all you need. It doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to be real. I think that's what I would say. And it always seems like it's so much more difficult than it is. And we always think that we need this beautiful website, or we always think we need the perfect logo, and we don't. As a logo designer, I will tell you, I spent years doing that. Nobody's business tanked because they had a bad logo. So, it's nice to have, it's beautiful to have that little extra, but it's just really nice to just know that you have something that's helpful and useful. If you have that going for you, then maybe just reaching out to people and asking them to try it, and then get that word of mouth marketing rolling for you. Yeah. Good question.
Awesome. Yeah, all of these are amazing questions. Thank you guys so much for being so interactive and thoughtful in the questions you've asked. So we have like 10 minutes left. Do you think you want to do a reading now? And I know you mentioned maybe doing a little bit of a meditation after that.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone who asked questions. Sorry we didn't, if we weren't able to get to them all. What I think I'd like to do, we are right now, state of the world kind of stuff. We are in a lot of sticky energy still. We've just moved into the year of the Hierophant. So maybe what I can do is just a little bit on the fly. I'm thinking that we can pull a card to just a little bit of some of the energy that we could all use this week, right now, fill out, just to put us in a space of what to do with this Hierophant energy, right now. So Hierophant energy, I think I just want to chat on that as I'm shuffling 2021. I stated we're in the year of the Hierophant because we're in a year 5. 2 + 0 + 2 + 1 is 5. 5 is a year where we will have a little more challenge. The Hierophant is a card of, we still have some structures and we still have some, it is a card that typically represents things like patriarchy, hierarchies, systems where there are, where we begin to question dogma and rules and that sort of thing. So, I mean, as far as 2021 goes, like, how can we best work within this energy, I think is the card that I'd like to pull for us. And then we can do maybe a meditation based on that. I'm going to go with that. It's also a year, though, the year 5s, middle of any suit, where we are looking at how do we get along with others and what are some of the conflicts. But as soon as we get past the 5s, we start to move into a lot more flow. So that's a beautiful thing about a year 5. It's almost like one foot in the past, which feels very relevant. One foot kind of in the first portion of the suits, and the next foot is like we're straddling the two sides of the one, of each suit, with the 5 being right kind of smack dab in the middle of the 1 to the 10. And the other foot feels like we're almost wanting to have that foot down and straddle the future, but the future hasn't arrived yet. So we're in this really interesting space where we are it's kind of like moving and we don't know what's going to happen. Beautiful about being in that space in a Hierophant year is realizing that we are our own gurus. I want a guru, or we are our own leaders. We are our own best knowledge, and that we can learn from other people, but we don't need to put anyone on a pedestal. It's like really going within this year is going to help us all. And the card that I picked along with the Hierophant is the Empress. And so I love that for creativity. She is just birthing all of this beautiful, she's got planets going on and there's a little bubble there's a mushroom in one of these bubbles, like just like the connectedness of life, the way mushrooms are all connected under the earth. So Hierophant and Empress energy. Let me just all right. So for everyone at home, what I want to do is I want to look at creating through the Hierophant and just doing a very quick meditation on, with the Hierophant, it's often a picture of a bishop or someone who is a spiritual leader. So I want to talk to our faith and finding faith this year as we move and creating from a place of faith. So, okay. So I'm just going to get you to close your eyes. We'll just, shake out if you've just been sitting there, and, if you want to just stretch out. I know I want to stretch my neck a tiny bit just before we get into this. And take a deep breath in and release. Beautiful. Okay, so I want you to notice your body. If you're on a chair, on the floor, sitting on your bed, wherever you're sitting, just notice it, where it connects to the chair, the floor below you. Notice the space around your body. Take a deep breath in and release. I'd like to call in this beautiful energy of the Empress. Imagine a light starting to come down into your body from above through the crown chakra. Gold, pink, white. It's kind of blending and just coming down into your body. And then it's going to just sit in your heart space. Allow it to sit, coalesce. It's going to mingle there in your heart. And when you take your next breath in, you're going to notice it just expands slightly. And it's going to expand beyond your body. It's going to expand out into the room. It's going to expand out beyond your building. This beautiful Empress light. Because you are a creator. You are wise. You are your own guide. You know exactly what and where and how to be. Allow that light to shine. And in your mind's eye, as you imagine your beautiful Empress energy, I want you to take notice of all the other people here tonight, anyone who watches the replay, that there are other little lights all around you, out in space, connected in space and time. And I want you to just take notice of all of the beautiful things that are happening. These people creating wonderful things, creating beautiful healing tools. All of these lights all around you, holding you, watching, noticing you. All of these lights all around, drawing down faith, knowing that everything is going to be wonderful in the future, understanding that they can create the life that they came here to create, understanding that you, them, us, all of us are able to be in this energy of divine creation. So take another deep breath in. Send that light out. Empress energy in a Hierophant ear. And with that, just want you to notice a small smile on your face and come right back to your room. You can open your eyes. On the fly, a little bit of Empress and Hierophant mixture there. Actually felt a little more, it felt much more light than I expected it to, which was lovely. So thank you everyone that was here kind of participating in that. You got some nice like bubbly energy going on. That felt like nice. You didn't have to get too Hierophant on us.
Yeah, that card is, well, it's on the cover of Muse, but it's also a card that I have at my desk at work. And normally when I'm in the office, I'm used to seeing it every day, that pink bubble energy.
Oh, nice. That was for you then, Allison. That's why that card came out.
We're rounding out to 11. I think that we might be wrapping up, but did you want to come back to pop back in?
Yes, and wow. Thank you, Chris Ann and Allison Janice, for such a great conversation. Your decks have been an inspiration to so many. So thank you for taking the time to share with us some of your process and your inspirations and insights about it. And I also want to thank Hay House for all of the great work that you guys do. And I want to especially thank all of you who came out tonight and participated. It's just so great to be able to gather in this way during these times. And I want to remind you that you can purchase Chris Ann's decks from Banyen. Support your local independent bookstores. Banyen books can ship anywhere in North America. You can look us up at banyen.com.
Yay.
Thanks again, and have a great night.
I'm so grateful.